everyone. I'm Neena Gopal. Welcome to Global Express, where we discuss developments in our backyard that have direct impact on India and its neighborhood. Today, we turn to our eastern neighbor, Bangladesh, a country that Delhi has long believed would remain its most reliable, its staunchest ally under the leadership of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina Wajed, but is now in free fall, in turmoil, caught in a vicious cycle of violence, first against the former ruling party, the Awami League and its loyalists, and now against the Hindu minorities and Christians and Buddhists and the Ahmadiyas. Ousted in a violent student agitation after 15 years in power, Sheikh Hasina has India on August 5th and was given refuge, an asylum. There have been repeated calls, for her extradition to Dhaka to face a string of charges with an international crimes tribunal holding a trial. This is a coup that India did not see coming. Is Delhi now doing the right thing by speaking out on the backlash against the minority Hindu community, the destruction of Hindu temples, the stepped up targeting of monks from ISKON, all Bangladeshis, which began with the arrest of Chinmoy Krishnadas Brahmachari when he attempted to leave the country? Two monks who visited him in jail have also been detained. Another 54 Bangladeshi origin ISKCON monks who were trying to cross over to India through the Benapole port crossing were prevented from doing so on Sunday. Another nine were stopped on Saturday. What and who exactly is behind the attacks on these Hindu monks? There is a political twist too, with the acquittal by the Bangladeshi High Court of Tariq Rahman in the Dhaka bomb blast case. Delhi must brace itself now for the political eclipse of Sheikh Hasina and the return to center stage of Khaleda Zia's Bangladesh Nationalist Party. Tariq Rahman's Pranay is no friend of India's. He says he doesn't want to settle scores, but that's already begun with or without his blessing. In fact, does India have any friends left in Dhaka, in the South Asia region? Is this aggressive diplomacy going to yield any results? Or should Delhi try another tack? The West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee has stepped into the fracas, calling for UN peacekeeping troops to be deployed in the border. And now we have the extremely troubling attack by a mob on the Bangladesh Deputy High Commission in Agartala on Monday. India's Minister of External Affairs has condemned the attack. Our Indian envoy Pranay Verma, however, was summoned for a dressing down by Bangladesh's acting Foreign Secretary Riaz Hamidullah. But not a word from Dhaka on the Indira Gandhi Cultural Center that was burnt down, or the Indian diplomats who face threats to their lives, both around their homes and at the Chancery. Where will it lead? Within Bangladesh and with its neighbor India? Bangladesh is marking another anniversary now, Bijoy Divas or Victory Day on December 16th, but this time it's only Sheikh Hasina who's speaking out. After staying largely silent for 4 months since she fled to India, Hasina has mounted a stinging attack on Mohammed Yunus, the interim chief, accusing him of genocide, calling him power hungry, saying there were plans to assassinate her and her sister. She was addressing a public rally in the US virtually, and she plans to do the same in London on December 8th. The 84-year-old Nobel laureate has called India's comments aggressive. He's charged these as fictitious stories, propaganda. He's also said elections will only be held after constitutional and judicial reforms. So the full-scale reforms which he expects to implement in January. What are we doing? I mean, we tackling the extremely troubling attack on the Deputy High Commission, on the various attacks on India in a true and trusted manner. Talking to us today, eminent Bangladeshi journalist, political analyst, and commentator on South Asia, Syed Badrul Ahsan. Welcome to the program. He's the author of a biography on Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Bangladesh's founding father, whose legacy is now being sought to be erased. Good to have you on the program, sir.
Thank you.
We also have with us Tania Amir, senior lawyer with the Bangladesh Supreme Court, who was very interestingly called to the bar in 1990 from Gray's Inn in the UK. Her father was a pivotal figure in the first Bangladesh government that was formed in April 1971. She herself is now based in the United Kingdom, but has been a vocal defender of the rule of law in Bangladesh all these years. Welcome, Miss Amir.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Professor Sreeradha Datta, who teaches at the OP Jindal Global University and is senior fellow at the Vivekananda International Foundation and non-resident fellow at the Institute of South Asian Studies, National University of Singapore. She writes copiously on Bangladesh and is a byword here in this country on our neighbor. Welcome, Professor Datta. Let's begin with you, Mr. Badrul Ahsan. It's not just the interim chief advisor, but leading journalists, columnists, the political class in Bangladesh who've all trashed India for making a big issue of the recent spate of attacks on minority Hindus and Hindu places of worship. Is that criticism really valid? I mean, Prime Minister Modi was in one of his first calls, in first message to the chief advisor of the interim administration, did bring up this problem and was widely criticized for doing so. The fact is, it's not only Hindu temples and shrines. The attacks have led to loss of lives, and now with the arrest of this ISKCON priest for sedition, matters seem to have spiraled. What do you have to say? What is behind these attacks on the Hindu minority? And is India right to call Bangladesh out on it?
Thank you very much. Glad to be on your program again. Uh, we in Bangladesh are actually going through an existential crisis. What we see in Bangladesh today, 53 years after liberation in 1971, is that our history, there's a concerted effort, there's a deliberate effort on the part of those who hold power in the country today. And I may add here that the people who hold power in the interim administration today are there in an unconstitutional manner. The constitution doesn't validate their being in power, so they've been installed there uh, after the events of 5th August, and we may also recall. That despite the fact that there is a lot of propaganda going on against the Awami League and Sheikh Hasina, and the word that is mistakenly being used, saying that she fled Bangladesh. She didn't
Mm.
flee Bangladesh. She was put on a helicopter by the army, then put on a military aircraft, again by the army, and made to go over to India.
So
Before
you're saying
she
that she had no choice in the matter.
she had no choice in the matter. And although we have been given the impression that she resigned, she didn't resign. She was not given the opportunity to resign. Under the Constitution, the Prime Minister is supposed to meet the President of the Republic and submit her resignation. That opportunity was not given. So, technically, legitimately, constitutionally, she remains Bangladesh's Prime Minister. That
That's a
is
very interesting point, sir.
yeah. So yeah, that and see if we argue, we can one can argue that she is no more in power. She is no more in power. Yes, she is no more in Dhaka, but then constitutionally she is still there, and the parliament, which was dissolved after the 5th of August, that was also an illegitimate act, okay, unconstitutional act. Parliament still exists according to constitutional norms. Now, to come back to your
Can I
point,
just can I
we
just ask you a question, a quick question? You said installed by this government was interim administration was installed. Who was it installed by?
It was installed by the army, and as Professor Yunus, but Professor Yunus has said that he was put in power by these students. Now
Yeah.
that's again a very curious thing. Now the army installed the government in this government in place. Now in our country, in Bangladesh, and also in Pakistan, of which we were part, say there have been repeated spells of martial law. Those were different things. Martial law removes everything: a government, a constitution, an assembly. We don't have martial law in that proper sense of the meaning. So this government was installed, and it comprises elements, advisors. They call them a council of advisors, who have had no experience in government earlier. So no political people are there, and we also have these students, very young people in university or just out of university. They also are advisors in this administration. So it's a situation where you have a chaotic situation going on. That's it's full scale anarchy now. Now to come back to
So
your
you're
point,
describing it as anarchy.
It is anarchy, yes, and it has been there since the 5th of August, and it's been going on. Now, as to the question about the persecution of Hindus, um, in Bangladesh, I'm sorry to say, there are lots of people, including people in the media, who are in a state of denial, and
Mm.
even today. Today, the British High Commissioner in Dhaka was called to the Foreign Office by the Foreign Affairs advisor, and his complaint was the Bangladesh government's complaint was that the all-party parliamentary group in the UK recently issued a statement condemning these attacks on the minorities and these violations of human rights. And he said that the government is very hurt, Bangladesh is very hurt. But the point is, the APPG, all party parliamentary group in the UK, was speaking the truth. So if you look at the APPG statement and what the Indian government, Indian authorities have been doing, I think they're right to point to the persecution of Hindus. Because if we go back to 1971, it was a similar situation when Hindus and Muslims together were targeted by the Pakistan army
That's right.
from March 25th, 1971 onwards. The Indian government came to our help. So these Hindus are our people. And we in Bangladesh, we who have always believed in a secular Bangladesh since 1971, we do not like to refer to them as Hindu or to the Christians and Buddhist Hindus. They're all Bengalis. So, but the fact is that this persecution has been going on. The ISKCON leader Chinmoy Prabhu Das, he has been in jail, and the extent of the lack of justice, the absence of rule of law that has been going on can be understood by the fact that when Chinmay Prabhu Das was produced in court in Chittagong the other day, not a single lawyer was available to defend him.
That's right.
That was a result of intimidation because earlier lawyers, this amazing lawyers had warned other lawyers that they should not come and defend Chinmay Prabhu Das. The one lawyer who was trying to defend him, he was later beaten up, and
That's right.
reportedly he's in jail, he's in prison. And again, it's not just Hindus who have been in a state of persecution. I might add that the Hindus, in a very vocal manner, in places like Chittagong, they have come out on the streets. They have defended themselves as citizens of Bangladesh. They have refused. They have made it clear that Bangladesh is their country and they will not leave Bangladesh despite the persecution. So that is a statement which is encouraging because, see, at the time of partition in 1947, 22% of the population in the then East Pakistan was Hindu. Now we have
Mm.
7.5% of the population as Hindus. Where did all these Hindus go? So that is
Yeah.
one question. So, and I'll add one point before I finish for the time being. See, the persecution that we have seen in Bangladesh since 5th August is also involves the repression that has been perpetrated against other people, against followers of the Awami League, against followers of Sheikh Hasina, and throughout the country. On the 5th of August, the Prime Minister's official residence, Gaurav Bhavan, was ransacked.
That's
And
true.
on the same day, the museum, which used to be, which is has a place in Bangladeshi history,
The Indira Gandhi Cultural Museum,
no, the Bangabandhu Sheikh
the
Mujibur Rahman.
Bangabandhu Museum.
Yes.
Yes.
So that was torched. And that was torched. The security forces stood by and nobody stopped that vandalism. Then, of course, you mentioned the Indira Gandhi Cultural Center. That was also torched. Then almost every symbol of Bangladesh's liberation throughout the country has been vandalized. So these
That's
things have
right.
been going on.
Yeah,
And
if I can
now,
just bring you in, Professor Datta, on this, on the fact that as Mr. Hassan has said, the UK High Commissioner was called in. The US State Department spokesperson has finally spoken out and said that all detainees must get legal help. It's obviously, a rap on the knuckles for Chinmay Das not getting legal representation. And Vikram Misri, the foreign secretary, India's new foreign secretary, is going to finally be heading to Dhaka on December 10th. But is there some kind of move by the British and the US and the UK to work together? Because India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar is going to hold talks now with the US State Department officials this coming week. The Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia, Donald Lu, is visiting Bangladesh too. I mean, not visiting Bangladesh. He's visiting India, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. He did visit Bangladesh during the January polls. So, would you do you think there's some coming together, of these various groups to see to it that Bangladesh doesn't fall into this trap of of becoming of taking its these pot shots at the minorities and this huge divide that seems to be building up now in Bangladeshi society.
Yeah, thanks, Neena. Always a pleasure to be here with you. And of course, my other co-panelist. Before I answer, a couple of nitpicking I don't want to do, but I just want to bring out a few facts. Again, I've known Syed Badrul Bhai for a while now. Krishna Das is a former member of the ISKON. He was expelled in July. And there were also issues with him in his earlier ISKCON center where he was outside Bangladesh. And I think we would like to, remember that a little bit and not think
Yeah,
that.
that's true. There's a question mark over him.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
And there are issues about, certain other things which hasn't come out in the public domain, but there are concern areas also. Also, I mean, a point about Sheikh Hasina not fleeing. Do we expect a former prime minister to walk across the border and move out? Of course, she fled. Let's not get into semantics and change she had to leave the country. I mean, what is other the synonymous for that? There was situation was such, given the kind of violence that her government had unleashed on completely unarmed people and civil society and students, there was a little choice left. So, I mean, we can just keep going into legalities about that or the constitution and things like that. Uh, the government collapsed. And it is true that the interim government has no constitutional space. But given the requirement of the hour, that was the best case scenario that could have happened. I mean, the caretaker government couldn't have taken in because the caretaker government was again removed by this prime minister completely on a unilateral decision. The committee report wasn't adhered to, which she had herself set up. So I'm just saying a bit of clarity on these issues would be good. But coming back to the point that you mentioned, yes, I think it's a deep concern for everyone about the minority issue, which has periodic violence outbreak that we've seen. And I think India, in no uncertain terms, has raised that. And also, I think for the first time I see in history of Bangladesh that the Hindus have walked on the road, have said exactly what Badrul Bhai said, that they're not going to let go. And, this is their country also. But what was happening to the Hindus for the last so many decades? Why didn't I hear a single voice about them before? It was only left to academics like us to write about them and the property issues and all of
So
that.
that's actually what was also intriguing, because all this while in the last 53 years we haven't actually heard of any attacks on Hindus per se. And when I traveled in Bangladesh, also I remember I didn't see a divide. I could see temples and churches and mosques, all functioning perfectly in sync with each other. It didn't seem as if there was a separate kind of community. But that's what I'm curious about. So, to take
So,
it
I
to
mean,
another
let's
level,
not let's Nina. Let me just come back to this point. I mean, I think we've seen 5th August. In the vandalism, the complete destruction of the properties and all of that. Anything that stood for Awami League was attacked. Hindus were also part of that. While as I'm saying again, that Hindus have never given their dwindling numbers. Every time I've done a lot of work on the Sundarban area, and I've seen how villages across Bengal and Bangladesh, how young girls after 16 are married into Indian side. Because of the safety issue, because of exactly this kind of thing. Maybe there hasn't been any, the kind of uh,
it
focus
hasn't
violence
been,
outbreak
yeah,
what we've
yeah.
seen and I would probably say about 2 or 3 episodes that's happened since 5th August. Not the crazy numbers that the media on every figure. I think fact checking is something that we really need to be a little concerned about. But I'm just saying that and but again, coming back to the international, and I think it's a good thing that people are rallying around because nobody wants it. I'm absolutely sure within the interim government, there is not a single member who
If I
would
can come
support.
back to your point about the Sundarbans, so you're saying that there's always been an undercurrent of distrust and mistrust among the Hindu
100%.
community, and so they were being moved.
So
That's why the dwindling numbers of
it
Hindus.
was
Is that what
always
you're
about
saying?
attack. It was always about, taking away the properties from them. And also
I see.
young girls were never felt safe by their families, which is why if you go around those villages, you'll see how anybody beyond 16 is left unsafe, felt unsafe, and then married into Indian families across the border. It's
That's
it's a
that's quite
it's a
intriguing.
rampant practice for the last at least 30 years, if I'm not mistaken, and continues. The last 15 years, the track record hasn't been anything but anything. It has continued. The trend has continued. So while they have been supporters of my league, constantly, there has been no change in that. It
So
isn't that.
they were not targeted because they were Awami League supporters,
Yes,
but
because you had people on the ground who were, the local police force was all Awami Leaguers. So in that sense, you didn't have a outbreak of what we saw just now in Chittagong. But it wasn't as if the Hindus were feeling very safe and secure. Then why would there be so much of migration from there? Why would the numbers dwindle? We haven't, looked at that through that lens earlier. Now, of course, of outbreak of violence, again, the first round of violence, we are aware of the numbers that, which is actual numbers, not the hyped up numbers, which the social media is ramping up. And also this, Chittagong episode. And I think the local ground condition, given the fact that interim, again, the point very well taken about how the interim government is now made of members who've never been in the political landscape. So,
yeah.
their limitations quite there. I mean, it's clearly understood. And they probably didn't have any sense of the ground reality in terms of if arrest a former ISKCON member like this, and he had a fan following. He, of course, in between of during the August phase also was trying to, bring in, kind of amity, talking to different stakeholders. So
I
there was
see.
a kind of a, reaction on the ground because of what happened in terms of the bail not being given and things like that. And the obviously local administration was not aware of it. And it's true, the
Yeah.
local administration has been really loose. I just want to point out here, I was there in Dhaka for 8 days during the middle of November. I didn't step out of Dhaka. I was all over Dhaka. It was really life as usual, business as usual. What I saw was the youngsters were out on the roads playing music. The cafes are filled out. I spoke to a few people from the temple, priest, and they convinced me that things are okay with them. That there hasn't been any, but this is also Dhaka. This is not outside. So I haven't been able. So I don't know. But within Dhaka itself, I didn't feel the sense of. I spoke to a lot of different people that I interact
We'll
with
come back
from.
to you on that. We'll come back to you on that
Yeah, so
because
I'm
of
just
that in
saying,
a
but it's
minute.
good that the international, committees, community is kind of taking note of this because this should not happen. Minorities always feel unsafe, and there is no reason why the majoritarian should not support them and should not, cover for them. And I think,
Yeah.
the point is that exactly what he said, that everybody is a Bengali and they should all be living in amity. But unfortunately, it hasn't been the case in Bangladesh's track record. Let me not bring in Mujib and what he had told, Shantu Larma at that point of
Mm,
time.
mm.
So it's while we do understand that in general Bangladeshis do believe they're all Bengali, but there have always been miscreants all over Bangladesh society who've always given the Hindus are extremely tough time. And
Okay. Miss, I mean, if I could bring you in, do you agree with that assessment, which we're arriving at? And it was to a great extent, I feel that the US has played a role in trying to sort of limit the damage that could happen to Bangladesh. Do you see that? Do you see the Trump administration? Sort of having a hands-off approach because the Biden administration didn't. And now, of course, there's intense speculation in India that the Pakistan's ISI is cashing in on the anger against Hasina. I don't know how far that is true, but is there a greater game afoot, or is this really a local, manifestation of local anger against Sheikh Hasina?
Thank you, Nina, and thank you for inviting me to your program. Nina, what I would propose to do, I'm going to state some facts. And
Sure.
your audience here are very intelligent people. and I'm sure they can draw their own conclusion and connect the dots. So it's very important, I think, that we look at it from above, not get bogged down, and look at it from inside as to who is doing who and what. Uh, First of all, what I want to flag is that soon after this government came to power, 177 terrorists who were in jail have been released. As a lawyer, I find it very difficult to understand because a lot of them are convict and they were under trial prisoners. So how they can be released? If there is a conviction, only then if if there is a miscarriage of justice, then the president has the power to pardon. But once you're a convict and you're undergoing trial, and you're arrested, and it took a lot of the Holy Artisan incident we've had. We're talking about people of that magnitude, that nature.
So were these terrorists who were detained under the Awami League government and the 15-year long Awami League administration, or does it date back even further?
Neena, I don't want to go into whether it's Awami League or BNP. Obviously, the Awami League government was there for the last 15 years. I'm talking about the law enforcement machinery, and I'd invite your audience and yourselves to look at it. That we have a republic, and there are three organs in the republic. And I was going to come to that in a little while. Second thing I wanted to say, there was a jailbreak. And those who were allegedly were moving these movement forward, which resulted in the change in government, they actually initiated the jailbreak, and 77 terrorists were released. Now, are they just out and sucking their thumbs, or are they galvanizing and reorganizing themselves? So I raised this question. Secondly, soon after, more than 400 police stations were burned, right? In a systematic manner. This is not something, there was agitation, and it was systematically the police of my republic. Their backbone have been broken, okay? Yes, the police were not up to mark, and I, as a citizen, would like to reform it. I don't want to destroy nor burn police stations.
Now, that's a very good point.
On average,
and you're
just
saying
on
that
average,
these
if there were 2 to 3 police stations were killed, we're talking about more than 1,000 police officers being killed. While this is going on, the other side of the situation is that cases are being filed, not just against minorities, but anyone and everyone who is progressive, secular, who would like to give potential leadership to the country. And the students who were killed, their parents or their mothers or their father, their brothers or their sisters are the complainants in these cases. Now, I believe in justice. I'd like to see the perpetrators come to the books. Now, in each of these cases, there are about 300 accused who are named and 500 accused who are unnamed. Now, in the lifetime of these people, no justice is going to be done. These cases will never face any investigation. They're spurious cases. There's no specific allegation. And in this list, we have lawyers, human rights defenders. We must be the only country in the world who has almost over 150 journalists who are accused of murder. All these cases have a same template. And everyone is accused of 302 of the Penal Code. It's not even very creative. So there's no specific case of money laundering or no specific case of corruption, which is what the previous regime was accused of. But everyone who is anyone who are not even linked with the government.
So basically, you're saying that they're
cultural activists.
That they're settling scores.
Along with the Hindus, I also, Neena, just allow me to finish this, okay?
Yeah.
What I would like to say that it's not a minority issue, because we've seen the Muslim shrines, Sufi shrines being decimated. And, in the human rights discourse, we have various categories, and it's very easy to say minority, but it is not.
Yes,
Bangladesh
very good point.
situation is not minority. I think the majority are being attacked. Okay, so we have the journalists, we have the lawyers, we have human rights activists, we have social workers, we have cultural activists. The other day at the street theater, they put a ban that there could be no theater, no uh, acting that should go on. So they had to stop. I come from Kushtia, which is a place of bauls, Lalun, place of Lalun. So the baul festivities had to stop. So what I'm seeing is the radical and extremist version of Islam. Most people in Bangladesh are Muslim. We don't need to become, learn Islam or learn to read the Quran because most of us know that. But we believe in a peaceful Islam, which is a religion of peace and harmony, particularly communal harmony. But the Islam that they're propagating is not that. And if I may connect the dots again and invite your viewers to draw their own conclusion rather than mine, the way how the factual situation again, both Awami League and BNP are homegrown parties.
Yes.
They believe in the republic structure as we know it, whereby the all power of the republic belongs to the people. Now, these extreme political parties, if one is a banned party, Hizb ut-Tahrir, but we are seeing ISIS flags. With that, some of these people are speaking in Urdu, which is alien to us. They're going around in that. And then these political parties, with this Hizb ut-Tahrir or Jamaat Islam, they're not homegrown. Jamaat Islam's head office is in Lahore. They were born in India, and it's like a global multinational entity. And they have local branch offices to execute policies which is taken outside the territory of Bangladesh. Same with Hizb ut-Tahrir. It's not a homegrown party. They're global. They're a global multinational entity, right? So what we're beginning to see is undermining the local homegrown parties, and they're not perfect. Of course, we have faults. Our parties, our democracy has a long, long way to go, and I'm not apologizing for them because I don't need to. And I'm one of the first ones to critique them. But nonetheless, they're homegrown. But these entities are foreign. So it begs the question, who are the policymakers? Where are these policies made? And they have global resources, they have global financing. The other casualty in this process is also women. Now,
yes,
with
I was
the
going to say
ISKCON
very
situation, I just want to
Taliban-esque.
conclude by saying the ISKCON situation, and just again factually, Chinmoy has been charged, Mr. Chinmoy has been charged with treason. The penalty for that is death penalty. For what? For flying ISKCON flag and Bangladeshi flag, and the complainant alleged that the Bangladeshi flag was lower than the ISKCON flag.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so this, as a lawyer, I'll tell you, there's no ingredient of treason here. And this happened in broad daylight. There are videos there. So in a situation like that, there's no need to arrest anyone either. So whether he is a member of ISKCON or not, that is totally irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. We are talking about a case here of a citizen of Bangladesh, right? At the same time, we have videos of people flying the ISIS flag, speaking in a foreign language, and the government is not taking any action. Your other speakers, our guests, they're right in saying that minority rights have not been fully protected in Bangladesh, and we're the first people to criticize our respective governments about that. What is different this time is that the state machinery is being used to persecute not just Hindus, but the state machinery is being used to persecute anyone who is progressive, journalists, lawyers, human rights defenders. So the lawyers, the lawyers have been threatened, they have been beaten up. They are in fear to go to the court. I have never. I practiced before the Supreme Court in Bangladesh and I go to the district courts. I've never experienced anything like that. No lawyer in Bangladesh has ever experienced anything like that.
No,
So,
that's very enlightening. Actually, we had
these are
absolutely
the
no.
narratives. So this is like the state machinery is being used, which has not happened before, to persecute. So
Yeah, if I can just
I
bring
would
you.
again invite, and this is the only invitation that I would make to your viewers. And this is my conclusion at the end. I would say that let's not just look at it as a Hindu issue or a
Yeah,
minority issue. I
that's
think
very
it's a
interesting.
majority issue. These radicals who are the extremists, they are the handful minority. So what is purported to be what they're purporting to do is hijack the country from its citizens who believe in progressive values, communal harmony, and the constitution as it is. And I will come back, if you give me opportunity later, to talk about the constitutional reform committee
Yeah,
which
I
this
do want to bring
government
that up, but I
formulated. And
want to
I'll
bring
save
in.
my my
Sure,
comments on that for later. So that is
sure.
very alarming. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking at what you're saying is we're looking at the Talibanization of Bangladesh, basically. The fact is that, there is the Hizb ut-Tahrir and the Jamiat al-Bangladesh, Ulema Bangladesh are foreign,
Although they're banned, but they're openly having demonstrations, seminars, symposiums, broadcasting, and government, not only have they failed to do law and order, but in a sense they're encouraging them. The government seems
so
to be
Mr. Badrul
unable or
Ahsan,
unwilling to
yeah.
enforce any law against them. So this is the discriminatory bit that we are
Right.
observing.
Right. So, Mr. Badrul Ahsan, do you agree with this assessment, or do you feel that Mohammed Yunus is basically nothing but a face, and the actual power is lies with a completely different entities which we are now seeing coming up out of nowhere? I mean, the Bangladesh, I think, has been banned for quite some time. I didn't know the Hezbollah Tahrir was active at all. And is this something that could actually happen? Do you think the country could be hijacked by these, extreme,
Well, it has virtually been hijacked the country. And as for the people who are there at the helm of affairs, I'll just put it this way: see, they are in office, but they are not in power. That's the point. Is
Mm,
because nobody, Professor Yunus is clearly not in charge, and
mm,
then we have these their student supporters, say, who actually put conditions on them. At the beginning, if you recall, we had this one of these advisors, Brigadier Shakawat Hussain, who was made advisor for Home Affairs. Then he says
mm,
something which was welcome, because he said all parties, including the Awami League, if the Awami League reforms itself or prepares itself, it's free to come back to politics. The very next day, these students held a demonstration against him and threatened him with dire results. So he was removed from that position, and somebody else was put in there, and he was given the ministry of jute. So
mm. Yes.
so I mean, personally, I think if I were in his place, or if you were in his place, we would have resigned, rather than being demoted. But that sort of intimidation goes on, and these students have been. I mean, we now have a culture where students refuse to go back to classes. We have these HSC, higher secondary certificate of 12th classes. These students, their examinations were interrupted by the events of July and August. And now they don't want, they have made it clear that they don't want to go through those examinations. They want what we call as auto pass, auto promotion.
Oh
So,
my
and the,
gosh.
and the government, and all these people have been promoted. Now, how do you get them into the university? What will be the selection process? Now, about the Jamaat, yes, as Tania Amir was saying, the Jamaat was a banned party. What the Awami League government failed to do was it spent a long time, a long many years, without actually banning the party. The party was simply deregistered. When the party was finally banned in the final few days of the Awami League government, that was that was
Way too
insufficient,
late.
way too late. And the Jamaat has a history of violence in both Pakistan and Bangladesh. When the Jamaat was formed in 1941 in pre-partition India by Maulana Abul Ala
Maududi.
Maududi, yes. So and the Jamaat was against the Pakistan movement. They even disrespected Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder of the Pakistani state. Pakistanis called him, and even now call him Qaid-e-Azam, but the Jamaat, in a very derogatory manner, referred to him as Kafir-e-Azam,
Yes, yes.
yeah, the Kafir-e-Azam. And then in 1953, the Jamaat carried out a campaign against Ahmadiyas, which led to the killings of 2,000 Ahmadiyas in Lahore in 1953. And it was only put down when martial law was declared in Lahore by the Pakistan Army. Lieutenant General Azam Khan was there. Maududi was arrested. He was tried. He was sentenced to death. But a few years later, he was pardoned and freed. Then again, in 1971, of course, the Jamaat Islami cooperated fully with the regime of General Tikka Khan and General Yahya Khan. It was instrumental in forming the so-called peace committees, which are not peace committees at all. Their job was to identify Awami League supporters, Mujib supporters, and anybody who was in favor of the liberation war. They were targeted, and in December, throughout the year, they did that. Their leader in Bangladesh, in occupied Bangladesh at that time, Professor Ghulam Azam, he and his team, he and his outfit, they took part in the killings of these intellectuals in December 1971, 13, 14, 15. These 3 days, the killings had gone on throughout the 9 months, but the last stage they had these intellectuals killed.
You're
And
talking
again,
about the Dhaka University, the
Dhaka
door-to-door,
University,
they went.
Dhaka University academics, as also other people, doctors, engineers, I mean, a whole range of people, scores of people,
Mm.
and we didn't know about these
Yes,
killings because we celebrated on the 16th of December. Only a couple of days later, by the 18th of December, did we come to know of these deaths because their bodies, their mutilated, decomposing bodies were found in Dhaka, on the outskirts
that's
of Dhaka. The
that's
Jamaat in
right.
1974, again in Pakistan, it created problems, it created agitation against the Ahmadis in Pakistan, again in 1974, and forced Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto at the time to ban the Ahmadiyas as
Mm.
non-Muslims in Pakistan. So the Jamaat is here. And the other day, last week, in fact, the leader of the Bangladesh Jamaat, he was in London, and he was asked questions about the Jamaat's role, whether the Jamaat would apologize for its role in 1971. And he made a curious statement. He said, if there is documentary evidence that the Jamaat took part in these killings, we are ready to apologize. There's no need for documentary evidence. We have literature, we have books. So that was about Jamaat. Now, coming to the present situation, I'll be very brief. See, we in Bangladesh, before the 5th of August, as Tania would testify to it, as also Dr. Datta knows, we in Bangladesh were aghast at the levels of corruption that were going on under the Awami League regime. And we complained. All these people, a former IGP, Inspector General of Police, and other people, they just left the country. They were allowed to leave the country with hordes of money, and they had built properties in the country, property that can't be explained. How did they come by those property? People
That's
just
very, that is actually quite interesting. You're saying that they were allowed to leave the country with bags of cash.
Yes, and then at her last press conference, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina let these newsmen know that she called it one of a peon, she called him, on her staff,
Okay.
he had come by 400 crore taka. And then she said, and what was his punishment? Because his punishment was his identity card was removed. The very next day, this man fled to Washington, and on the Friday of that week, he was seen praying in a mosque in Washington. So these things were going on, and we wanted an end to corruption. And when the Yunus government came in, the expectation was that corruption would be dealt with firmly. But the Yunus government extended its reach. It went into different directions. Now it has too many things on its plate. Talking of sedition, ISKON, Prabhu Das, Chinmay Prabhu Das is being accused of treason, of sedition. But then nobody says anything about the sedition that has been going on. A couple of weeks ago, one of the three new advisors were sworn in, by the president into the Council of Advisors. And immediately after that, one of these young advisors, he had Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's portrait pulled down at the
Yeah.
presidential palace. Now, that was an act of treason because under the constitution is still there. Under the constitution, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman is the father of the nation. So no action was taken there. Then again, there have been incidents of the Bangladesh flag being used
Desecrated.
as a prayer mat, and a Maulana Maulvi walking across this flag or standing over there and offering his prayers. That is sedition. So these acts of sedition are being ignored, while the one allegedly committed by the ISKCON leader are being paid attention to. And finally, one other thing, Tania Amir has been speaking of the system of justice, about the arrests, about the cases that are being filed. Interestingly and intriguingly, I say, when these accused who have been who are brought to court at present, there's a whole group of lawyers, anti-Awami League lawyers, who happen to have these eggs, boiled eggs, in their pockets, and it's a weaponization of eggs that has been going on. The former Awami League ministers, lawyers, and other people, whenever they're brought into the courtroom by the police, these lawyers pelt those people with eggs, and nothing is done. The other day, they went to an extreme. A judge was reading out from a document, and some of the lawyers there, pro BNP lawyers, they said he was not showing proper respect to General Ziaur Rahman, apparently the founder of,
Mm.
I mean, he was the founder of the BNP, and they started pelting him with again eggs, and
Yeah.
he had to leave the place. So this kind of, I mean, as I said at the beginning, anarchy prevails, and we don't know when it will end. Because personally,
So
I don't.
if I can just bring Professor Datta in, if we could quickly give me an idea on whether these foreign countries, which are must be extremely concerned, are worried at all over these turn of events. I mean, if you have, shouldn't India be worried? Because I mean, we've had protests in West Bengal, in Hooghly, and in all kinds of towns across the border. And there is now, of course, Tripura is burning. So, I mean, the High Commission there, Deputy High Commission there, has been burnt. Do you see some kind of, should we be concerned? Should India be concerned about this now hot border on its east?
Yes, of course. I mean, the kind of outbreak of violence that we've seen, it is something which would naturally, because there is a immediate spillover into our borders, and we've seen that this episode about students walking over Indian flag in a well-known, reputed institution was something that was really taken badly, and quite naturally so, especially in today's world, but it's all spread so quickly through social media. The information, a lot of it is, of course, misinformation that goes on, but a lot of it, again, is what is happening on the ground. And it's going to be suddenly very, very unsettling for India to have to, deal with these kind of issues on both sides. And there are miscreants on both sides, because I think largely Bangladesh or India want peace and stability to be there, exist there. And I
No,
think
but
they,
did we not see it coming? That was what I was most interested in. The fact is that
the fifth
we didn't have a
Congress.
clue. Did we not have a clue that something like this was there was anger against Hasina, and that we should have, uh, I don't know, advised her differently at all? I mean, if any advice was, if they were open to advice at all.
I mean, from whatever little that I can see from the official public domain, I don't think India really thought that something like this would happen. There wasn't any, from their side at least, I don't know what they were thinking internally, but at least in the public domain, we didn't see any such. And of course, the fact that the quick changeover that happened on the 5th and whatever
Yes.
you've seen subsequently an Indian statement doesn't really say that India knew, in that sense that there was something as drastic as this was going to happen. Yes, of course, there was ground. uh, some kind of information about the fact that people were losing faith in her.
Yeah, that was coming through.
Yeah, that was coming through.
Mr. Amir, if I could come to you, you did raise that point about this body that has been set up to, check about talk about the elections and about governance and the judiciary. It almost looks as if that Mohammed Yunus is going to stall the elections because if they would this committee be able to submit its report by January? And is this a move then to stretch this interim administration a little longer, or will the return of Tariq Rahman, which everyone is talking about, going to be the sort of turning point, or will it have to wait till he comes?
Thank you, Nina. There is a bigger question here. And the question is, by a subordinate executive order, how do you constitute a committee which is going to touch the biggest and the highest law of the republic? So this is a subordinate order. So this government must know its place. In our constitutional governance in any country, as just as in in India, it's a 2/3 majority in parliament that can amend the constitution, right? A committee cannot not even recommend this to the government, because it begs the question: what is the government going to do with the recommendation? How the government cannot implement it. So to appoint a committee for changing the constitution or to throw away the constitution, if you ask me, this committee is functus officio, a coram non judice. They absolutely have no authority mandate whatsoever. Now, we are hearing a lot of talk from these extremist elements, the Islamist elements, who wants to throw out this constitution and replace it with something like a caliphate. Literally, if you read the writings on the wall in Dhaka, that's what they're saying. Now, they have a problem with the birth of Bangladesh, and some of it Badrul Bhai mentioned already, because Bangladesh was the first majority Muslim country whereby we have emerged saying that the will of the people is supreme. Our constitution starts with "we the people." So we have given ourselves a constitution and gifted ourselves a country based on secular democracy. Now, most Muslims living around the world are not citizens. They are not enjoying, at least de facto, I mean, de
So you're
jure
saying
democracy.
most Bangladeshis who live abroad are not citizens?
No, that's not what I've said. I've said
Well, I
most
didn't get you.
Muslims
Uh-huh.
living around the world, yes, are not necessarily citizens. There's a special family or a special regime, yes, who is governing them. So the fact that sovereignty belongs to the people, that happened for the first time. So they have a problem with that because they believe that sovereignty belongs to Almighty. And therefore, they want to place themselves in the seat of Allah and impose, according to them, what is Muslim law or Sharia law. Right? So one of the questions I posed to them, I mean, because I got Jamaat's registration as a political party deregistered because they were disqualified as a political party to get registration. And one of the questions I posed was that when did Allah give a power of attorney to Jamaat Islam to implement God's law? When, how, where? Even Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, was a messenger of Allah. And the Islam that most Bangladeshis know is not a political Islam. So while most Bangladeshis believe in a divine authority, divine power, but when it comes to temporal governance of the republic, we believe those who will give service to the people must be accountable to the people because they run themselves on the people's money. People pay tax, so they have to be accountable. So on
So
the
are you
temporal realm,
saying, Ms. Ahmed, that there's a move to bring about caliphate in Bangladesh.
That's what, even in my first part of my proposition, I had given you the various dots for you to connect for yourself. That where is this leading to? So what they believe is that Parliament does not have authority to enact laws because laws are divine, and they want to rule by divine power, divine prerogative. Christianity went through that in Europe.
Who
So
is the they? Who is the they that you're referring to?
uh, I would like to go to the primary source of evidence. So if you look at the party constitution of Jamaat Islam, if you look at the party constitution of Hefazat, in fact, in Bengali, the Hefazat already have a constitution for Bangladesh, which is going around in social media, as to what, by throwing away this constitution, what they want to bring about. And
I
that
see.
is treason. They want to overthrow the republic and replace the republic with a caliphate of some sort. Okay. And that constitution is going around, and the government is not taking any action at all. In fact, no action has been taken against the coercive violence. When we talk about the students, I want to unmask it further. They're not really students. Most of the students are disillusioned, are not with them at all. So, in the name of the students, a lot of them are Shibir activists, the extremist
Mm.
madrasa activist, but they shielded themselves wearing the mask of a student. Most students are not there anymore. We are beginning to find that out now. And of course, Dr. Yunus said when he went to New York that it was meticulously planned. So it's not something that just happened just like that. So it reminds me of situations in Syria, in Iraq, in Egypt, where the democratic governments became overbearing, they became very
Yeah,
corrupt, and
the
then
Arab
look
Spring.
what has happened. Yeah. So we, the people of Bangladesh, most people who are whether the Sufi shrines have been destroyed, the Sufis, the Hindus, the Christians, the Ahmadiyas, women as a class of people are feeling unsafe. In the young girls are having problem. I hear just going out for walks in the parks. Women at the sea beach are being
No,
taunted and
that's
bullied.
very that's a
All that
superb
sort of thing is
point
going on.
actually. Yeah, that's quite a
Cultural activists.
revelation.
So these are the first people, and we are the majority. And I want to,
Yeah.
and this is my own poll, and I'd like to invite all your viewers and Bangladeshi viewers that we must raise our voice and say in a peaceful manner. The problem is most majority people, we are peaceful. We are not burning anything. We're not destroying and desiccating statues, but we are silent majority. We are not at all with this. We
Yeah.
remain the owners of the republic. The constitution will say we the people. And in order to amend the constitution, only as I said, a parliament can do that. And Bangladesh was born, if you like, uh, uh, because our elected representatives, Yahya Khan held an election because Pakistan did not have a constitution. In
Mm.
order, a full-fledged constitution, Pakistan never had. So that's a different story. Uh, so Jinnah, who is the founding of Pakistan, a lot of people don't know he was also the governor general at the same
He
time.
was.
So he had
He
two
was.
flags, right? So Pakistan and India was made independent dominion, but whether Pakistan at all was an independent nation, and it ruled through the barrel of the gun, and the governor general never allowed any political parties to develop. Till 1958,
And
there was a governor general. So
yeah.
and there was no full-fledged constitution of Pakistan. So
Yeah.
1970 election was held to form a constitution, and we
Mr.
won
Ahmed, I'm running
160.
out of time. So if I can just turn to each one of you and you can make your concluding remarks. I am very curious about, the fact that they're talking about Tariq Rahman. Will he come back and will he be the front, the face of this caliphate, so to speak? And Professor Datta, if you can see into the future, look into the tea leaves, and see what is going to happen, across our border. We'll start with you, Mr. Hassan.
Neena, sorry, I think you misunderstood. What I've said that both the local parties are homegrown, BNP and
No, no,
Awami League.
I
I'm
didn't
talking about
misunderstand.
the
I got
Caliphate
you.
being the foreign parties who are
Yes,
operating inside
absolutely. But the
Bangladesh.
fact
Okay?
that the fact that we've had it in various countries across the Middle East where governments have fallen, uh, and fallen quite spectacularly. I mean, so we've seen that happen now in Bangladesh. And then, of course, as you said rightly, the targeting of the Sufi shrines and the Ahmadiyyas and the Hindus and so on, which follows
Churches.
churches, which follows a pattern.
Yeah.
There is a pattern here which seems remarkably like what's happened, in the Middle East, parts of the Middle East. Mr.
Yes.
Hassan.
Do I respond, Neena, to your question
Please,
earlier?
I wanted to tell us something about whether the Awami League has it in them, has the stomach for a fight.
Well, it so happens that about 40%, if not more, 40% of the electorate in Bangladesh has always been supportive of the Awami League. So, whatever the present administration does, it has to accommodate the Awami League. The difficulty with the Awami League now, unlike the difficulties that it faced in 1971 when Bangabandhu was arrested by the Pakistanis and taken away to former erstwhile West Pakistan, there was a senior Awami League leadership in place, Tajuddin Ahmed, Syed Badrul Islam, and Tania's father, Barrister Amirul Islam, and others who were there, who formed the first government in, well, we don't call it the government in exile, we call it the Mujib government. But now, the problem is Sheikh Hasina is in India in exile, and the whereabouts of her other party compatriots are not known. Secondly, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman had prepared a second tier of leadership to take over in his absence, which they did. The problem with Sheikh Hasina was that she never developed a second tier of leadership. All she had around her were sycophants. So that is the problem. And but even so, at the grassroots level throughout the country, these grassroots Awami Leaguers have been ignored for the last 15 years. And in their place, all these businessmen were given tickets to parliament. They became ministers. They became MPs. So these people were ignored. But they are the people to whom the Awami League now has to go back. And as for the Yunus administration and the others around him, they need to remember the fact that the Awami League has always been there. I mean, during Pakistani times, Ayub Khan and Yahya Khan, it was suppressed. Yahya Khan banned the Awami League, but the Awami League came back through waging a war of liberation. And later on, it came back. It was suppressed under Ziaur Rahman in 1996. The Awami League will come back. So,
So
and
you see a
what we need,
political challenge? Do you see a political challenge
yes,
at all?
yes, the
Because
Awami League will face
you've also said that victory Divas, the Bijoy Divas hasn't even been mentioned so far in
no,
any
because
of the.
no, over the last 3 or 4 days, I've been contacting my colleagues, my journalistic colleagues, asking it because every year, every year in December, in fact, even before December, they write to me. They ask me about articles, special articles on the occasion, and I've been contacting some of them, and two of them said they're thinking they'll get back to me. And another has said, so we are thinking of doing something. Another newspaper editor, he told me this morning, we are trying to prepare some features on Victory Day. So see, they're not. So you see, the country has simply slipped from the hands of the secularists. So what we need to ensure in the coming days, because this is not the end, and I have a feeling that things will change again because this chaos, this anarchy can't go on. And what we need in Bangladesh is to reclaim Bangladesh as it was, a secular republic from 1971 up to the 5th of August, so minus the corruption and all the inequities that have gone on. So unless we
Well
reclaim
put.
that Bangladesh, a secular Bangladesh, see, the country has no future. And if the country slips into the hands of these Jamatis and these Hizbut Tahrir people and these so-called students, they're not students anymore. Because if we may recall what happened in July and early August, the students were there, they had their demands were fulfilled. But then these other people, these interlopers, they came in. These
Yeah.
other people, they came in, and nobody has yet answered the question of how these bullets, 7.62 bullets, which are not to be, you can't get them anywhere, I can't get them anywhere. They happen to be with the defense forces. How were these bullets and these guns distributed to these people? So they call it a student people revolution. It was no revolution at all. They call it a second independence. It was no second independence. For second independence, you need your country to be reoccupied by another power so that if we can fight another war of independence. So these misconceptions have not been removed. And Professor Yunus, during his visit to America, in a broadcast with the Bengal, in an interview with the Voice of America Bengali service, he said that he was asked why Bangabandhu's house had been torched. Instead of
Mm.
answering the question, he said a reset button is there. History is being reset. In other words, if the implication was that we are getting rid of all the past history, we are introducing new history. That is the danger that we face, and the
That is
country needs to
exactly
be
it.
safe from that danger.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Professor Datta, if you do you agree with this analysis that Bangladesh is facing a reset button?
I really feel that some immediate priority reforms should be in place, which is I think what they're attempting to. And I think the earlier multi-party elections are held, the better for not only political stability but economic growth, which is exactly what Bangladesh needs. Bangladesh has gone through a horrible economic crisis, given what the previous government and its policies. But I think Bangladesh needs to recover from this particular struggle that they've had. And I feel, a level playing field for every political party, multi-party elections is the best way forward, and the earlier the better.
No, very well put. Ms. Tania Amir, concluding remarks?
Yes, absolutely. If the government takes upon itself to do reforms for which it has no mandate, and also umpteen number of reforms, the government's tenure, by definition, is going to be in perpetuity. So the best thing the government can do is to give a date. In fact, in order to hold a free and fair election, Bangladesh is not a transitional country. We have the infrastructures in place. In order to hold a free and fair election, all we need that the administration is going to be impartial and it's not going to take any side. And to do that, 3 months, max 6 months. Beyond that, we must have an elected government. And I think the major political parties, particularly BNP, is demanding that. And I hope that the homegrown parties are not going to be duped, because what we get the feeling is that in the disguise of these so-called reforms, in fact, forget reforms. The very first act of ensuring law and order, which is the first task of any government, this government is grappling and failing miserably. Every day there's an incident. Every area there's a vigilante or a mob or a militia of some sort. So that itself the government is grappling with. The economy has just nosedived. The food prices have just skyrocketed. So the sooner and we have an elected government, the better. With those
Thank you very much.
notes, I'd like to conclude.
That's
Thank
very,
you.
very good points. Thank you very much, Syed Badrul Ahsan, for taking part in the show. Thank you, Ms. Tania Amir, and thank you very much, Professor Sreeradha Datta, for coming on Global Express. Please check out the new Indian Express website and click on Global Express and share. Thanks very much.